This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss everything there is to know in the world of sports. I am your Friday host, Ben Brown. Alex is out of the studio today. He will be returning on Monday, along with myself, to break down everything over the weekend here in the world of sports. And surprisingly, you might not think so, but we have an action-packed weekend ahead of us. Obviously, the National Football League is going to steal a lot of the headlines and a lot of the coverage. We will be talking a lot about NFL Week 1 in the show today. Going to be breaking down the opening game of the season last night between the defending champion Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers. We will also highlight on some of the other games in Week 1. There's a few games here that I really have my eye on. I think could be great games, as well as a couple that I think could possibly be upsets. So I'll be talking about that. But I mean, it's not just the NFL that we have. We have some college football, although we don't have too many standout matchups. We have a lot of schools who kind of took an easy week this week after last week. We had some great matchups. We were really sort of teased last week with college football. We had some great matchups, some great non-conference matchups in Week 1. And now it seems like everybody's kind of taking the week off as they get ready to get into the rest of their games early on here in the season. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of matchups, a couple that I think are probably the best of the week, but nothing really sticks out much in the college football landscape. But we have other great things. We have the U.S. Open going on. We have a lot of boxing over the weekend. We have UFC 203 over the weekend. We have the Manchester Derby. We have Manchester City versus Manchester United tomorrow. A lot of great things over the weekend. Going to be touching on some of that. I'm going to be doing a segment on UFC 203. We will see the highly anticipated debut of Phil Brooks, a.k.a. CM Punk, coming over from WWE into the UFC Octagon for the first time. Going to be talking about that as well as everything else on that card and just anything else that comes to mind. We got a great weekend, as I said. So I'm going to lead off the show here talking about the Super Bowl rematch from last night's game, the NFL first regular season game. We have one down. We have 255 to go. As I mentioned, we had a rematch between the defending Super Bowl champion Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers. It was the first Week 1 Super Bowl rematch since 1970. So the Denver Broncos come out on top 21-20 over the Panthers. Carolina has a chance to win the game late with a field goal. Graham Gano has a 50-yard field goal attempt. He makes it, but then Denver calls timeout, so the kick obviously did not count. And then, stop me if you heard this before, he misses the one that actually counts. So he puts it through the uprights just barely. It was heading towards the right, and then they call timeout, so the kick obviously did not count, and then he shanks it left. So Graham Gano, more like Graham, oh no, after he had a chance to win the game for the Panthers with just 9 seconds left, but did miss the kick. So a few takeaways from the game. I don't really want to get too deep into it. I felt like Trevor Siemian, starting quarterback for the Broncos, he did okay. I mean, he did what I would expect. He was 18 of 26, 178 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. It was the first time he threw a regular season pass, the young man from Northwestern, former 7th-round pick. He kind of just managed the game, which is what we saw from Denver last year. Think about Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler. Didn't really do anything spectacular. When you look at Denver, they're a team that likes to run the ball. C.J. Anderson, running back, had a great game last night. He had 20 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. And he also had 4 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. So, he had almost 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quite a good debut for C.J. Anderson after last season. He really struggled against a good Carolina Panthers defense. Cam Newton really got hit a lot last night. He didn't do too bad. He threw for 194 yards. He had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also had 54 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. He broke a couple of Steve Young's record, most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback, as well as most games throwing for at least 1 touchdown and running for at least 1 touchdown. So Cam Newton does make a little bit of history last night. But Cam Newton really got hit a lot last night. He got multiple shots to the head. Obviously, on the carries, he had 11 carries, so you have to treat him as a running back. But as a quarterback, I felt like he took a lot of shots. A couple of penalties, a couple I thought that might have been penalties that weren't called. But the big takeaway for me is that, especially in that last drive, as Carolina is sort of driving, trying to get in field goal range, which they obviously did, Cam Newton took a shot from Darian Stewart, straight up helmet to helmet. Stewart led with the helmet. They called a roughing the passer penalty, although it did get kind of taken away because Cam Newton did have an intentional grounding on that play, so the penalty's offset. But I felt like Cam Newton's on the ground. He's rolling around. Nobody goes out there to see if he has anything like a concussion. The NFL did say that they kind of checked on Cam Newton. They thought that he was okay, so they didn't do anything. But no one even came out to the field. Look at Cam Newton's hits. If that's any other quarterback in the NFL, there's definitely a lot more flags. There's probably maybe some ejections. Who knows? I think Darian Stewart's definitely going to be getting fined for his hit last night. But they would at least run out to the field, the medical staff, to check on the quarterback. Oh, it's Cam Newton. He's a big guy. He's physical. He'll be all right. That's the way he plays. You can't treat him like that. You have to treat every quarterback the same. You can't tell me that Cam Newton gets treated the exact same way out there that, say, Tom Brady does, that Peyton Manning used to, that Eli Manning does. He doesn't. There's no way at all. So I felt like the NFL probably has a lot of answers, or probably has to answer a lot of questions, what I was going to say, about why that happened. Because I don't feel like Cam Newton got a fair share last night. Obviously, Cam Newton, he's going to have a week and a half off with the Panthers until they go into their next game. Started off the season 0-1. They already have lost as many games as they had all of last year, obviously going 15-1 in the regular season. Denver starts off the season defending champs with a win. In the last 13 years, the defending champ on opening night is 11-2, so they are sticking with the trend of winning their first game. Obviously, ironically, Denver defeated Baltimore after they won the Super Bowl. That's the last defending champ to lose on opening night. So Denver starts off 1-0. I felt like in the game, I thought Carolina was probably going to win the game, but I felt like it would be a close game. You definitely saw that defense is still something that you have to be reckoned with when you play the Denver Broncos. Von Miller causing havoc all night. Their secondary, DeMarcus Ware, TJ Ward, Aqib Talib, Cliff Harris. He had a nice interception. Almost had another one on that last drive. He played really good as well. So Denver, I feel like Trevor Siemian didn't do too bad. Didn't do anything really stand out to me. I feel like he's really just a game manager. And I feel like anyone in that offense is going to be doing that. To be honest, I feel like you'll see Paxton Lynch sometime eventually during the regular season. Trevor Siemian had a couple of interceptions, a couple of bad ones, made a couple of mistakes. But, I mean, give the guy some credit. He's kind of like a rookie in a way. He had never thrown a regular season pass in the NFL going into last night's game. So I think you maybe have to give him some time. After all, he did win the game for them. He led them on 2 touchdown drives. C.J. Anderson, a lot of that, obviously catching the touchdown and then running one after they had the interception by Harris. So I feel like if they can run the ball like they did last night, Trevor Siemian doesn't make too many mistakes, doesn't give up, a lot of bad plays. He had a couple, but nothing too bad. As long as he can do that, the defense is going to be playing at a high level. I think Denver will be fine. I still picked them going into the season to win the division. A lot of people thought that they would take a big drop. I still like Kansas City as well. I think they'll probably be a wild card. And as far as the Panthers go, they will be fine. Obviously, Cam Newton, Ron Rivera, and the Panthers are going to be happy to get away from Denver. Think about how their last 2 games have gone last night and then the Super Bowl. Not too well against probably the best defense in the NFL. So they will be more than happy to get out of Denver and stop playing the Broncos for now. I think they will be fine as well. I think they will still win the NFC South. Probably go 12-4, something around there. So I think Carolina will be fine, and Denver opens up the season with a win. So that leads us into the weekend. Obviously, we have a full slate of games. We have 2 Monday night games featuring the Redskins and the Steelers, and the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. Those 2 games will be on Monday night. Sunday Night Football, we have the New England Patriots led by Jimmy Garoppolo against the Arizona Cardinals. And then there's a lot of other games as well that I'll be looking forward to. Of course, the Packers and the Jaguars. That game is in Jacksonville. It looks like they might be experiencing some thunderstorm conditions, temperature in the 90s. So definitely a tough atmosphere to go in there in Florida and play. I always feel like the Dolphins, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, a lot of these Florida teams have an advantage in the early months because it's hard to go down there and win in Florida. You have the tough atmospheres, the humidity, tough weather conditions. I feel like that's really hard to go into and win. So Green Bay is favored by 5.5. Jacksonville, a team that a lot of people are looking forward to this season, think they could be an up-and-comer, a possible playoff team. I wouldn't say that yet. I think they're maybe a year away. I think their defense needs to catch up to their offense a little bit. So I would expect Green Bay to win this game. I don't know, 5.5. I say Green Bay wins by 1 possession, so maybe a touchdown. Obviously, you have the return of Jordy Nelson. That's going to be really big for the Packers this year. You saw a lot of their success last year was stunted without him, so I think they're going to need him back if they have a chance to return to Super Bowl glory, which a lot of people do expect. So a couple of games I have my eyes on, really. One game, I'll give you a couple of games I think could be possible upsets. So my first game, call me crazy, but I like the Cleveland Browns over the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are a 3.5-point favorite. This game is in Philly, so they are the home team. When I look at the Browns, obviously, Robert Griffin III, we have to see how he can sort of revitalize his career in Cleveland under Hugh Jackson. A good offensive mind, good head coach. And then you look at the Eagles, you have the debut of Carson Wentz, the number 2 overall pick from North Dakota State. The Eagles traded up a lot to get him. They just traded Sam Bradford over the weekend, named Carson Wentz the starter over Chase Daniel. So you're going to see how he has to do. I mean, here's what I sort of pick the Browns here. When you look at Carson Wentz, he's coming from North Dakota State. That's a Division II college football program. He hasn't even played against top-level tier college teams, and now he's stepping into the NFL. He only played 1 preseason game because he had the hairline fracture in the rib. He hasn't really practiced much, and now he's having to step up and face an NFL team, an NFL roster. The Eagles don't have much on their roster anyways. You think about running back Ryan Matthews. He's decent, but he's really injury-prone. Wide receivers in Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar. And then the Eagles' defense is not that great either. The only person that really sticks out to me is Fletcher Cox, a defensive lineman who they signed in the offseason to that huge contract extension. So, you know what? Philly's favored by 3.5. I'm going to take the Browns in this game. I think that it's going to be a close game. I think it'll probably be an ugly game. But I think somehow, some way, Robert Griffin III and the Browns find a way to win the game. I think Carson Wentz probably has at least a couple of turnovers, and they squeak out of Philly 1-0 and give Cleveland yet another reason to celebrate after the Cavaliers obviously won the NBA Finals. So another game I think could be a possible upset is the Minnesota Vikings and the Tennessee Titans. The Vikings are favored by 2.5 in Tennessee. The Titans have won their last 3 season openers, and obviously they haven't really finished like they started. Last year they had the worst record in the NFL at 3-13, but the Titans do get off to good starts. They've won their last 3 openers, as I mentioned. I think the Titans are going to win here. Minnesota obviously still kind of, not necessarily shocked, but kind of having to deal with losing their quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. They bring in Sam Bradford. He looks like he's not going to be starting this game. Looks like they will go with Sean Hill while Bradford still tries to learn a lot of the offense. So I think with all that being said, I think I'll pick Tennessee. They always start good. It seems like they're going to have a good running game with the 2-headed monster of DeMarco Murray and the rookie out of Alabama, the Heisman Trophy winner, Derrick Henry. Marcus Mariota should be able to also throw the ball, and he can run the ball as well. So I will pick Tennessee in a close game. Minnesota's favored by 2.5. I will take the Titans in that game. In the last game I really want to highlight in week 1 is we have the Oakland Raiders going into the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans to face the Saints. I think this game honestly could be a shootout. Okay, so New Orleans is favored by only 1.5 at home. I find that really surprising in the Dome. The over-under is 51. I will take the over in that. I can honestly see both these teams putting up 30. You look at the Saints' defense last year, prolifically, historically bad, terrible. They didn't do much to improve it. Their first-round pick, Sheldon Rankins, is not going to play in this game. You look at the Raiders, they have a quite good offense. You look at Derek Carr. He had a good season last year. You have Amari Cooper coming into his second year. A lot of times receiver make that second-year jump, so really get improved. I think I'm going to take the Saints to win this game because they are at home. I think Drew Brees should have a good game as well. Mark Ingram, a good running back. CJ Spiller as well. So I'll take the Saints in this game, but I think both these teams will put up 30. So I think that could be probably one of the best games of the weekend. Definitely a highlight game, a shootout, an exciting game. And then the last game that I guess everyone will have their eyes on is the New York Giants going into Jerry World against the Dallas Cowboys. You have the highly anticipated debut of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Have to see how those two rookies do in their first regular season game. As far as the Cowboys go, I realize Dak Prescott had a good preseason, but until I see him do it in the regular season, I'm not going to really believe the hype. I think he puts them in a good chance to win and a good chance to compete because he has the added mobility. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys run some zone read stuff with Prescott, some spread stuff. He did that in college at Mississippi State. Expect them to pound the ball with Ezekiel Elliott, the first-round pick out of Ohio State. But you know what? I'll take the Giants. I'm a big believer in the Giants this year. I actually picked them to win the NFC East. They lost a lot of close games last year, choked a lot of games away. I think they can sort of correct that. The Giants have a good offense, not necessarily a good running attack, but Eli Manning's a good quarterback. He has a lot of weapons. Odell Beckham, they drafted Sterling Shepard from Oklahoma, and then you throw Victor Cruz in there. If he can stay healthy, he's probably one of the best number 3 receivers, probably that slot position. So the Giants, I think they can do a lot better. They spent a lot of money in the offseason on defense. I think they'll be much improved, and I think they will win the NFC East. So those are a few of my predictions for Week 1. Obviously, on Monday, Alex and I will be breaking down everything there is in Week 1. A lot of great games. Football is back, baby, and I know that I am excited, and I hope you are as well. So with that being said, I'm going to take my first commercial break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Coming out of the break, be updating you on a few things going on in the world of sports, as well as UFC 203 live on Saturday from the Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'll be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, currently going on in the U.S. Open. As of last night, we will be having a new number 1 overall ranked women's tennis player. Her name will be Angelique Kerber. She defeated Caroline Wozniacki in the semifinal in straight sets. On the other semifinal, we had Serena Williams, now going to be the number 2 ranked player in the world. She also lost her semifinal against Carolina Pliskova. So we're going to have Kerber versus Pliskova in the finals of the U.S. Open on the women's side. Obviously, I think we all know that Serena Williams is still the best women's tennis player, but a lot of times these rankings go on like a point-based system, depending on how often you play, how many tournaments you go in. So Angelique Kerber might be the new number 1 overall player, but I think we all know Serena's still the best in my opinion. She did struggle this year in the majors. She's only going to be winning Wimbledon, so maybe Serena will have a better year next year. She's going to have to wait next year to win her 23rd major. As far as on the men's side, we have the men's semifinals currently going on today. We have the number 1 overall seed, Novak Djokovic. He'll be facing number 10, Gael Monfils. And then in the other semifinal, we have number 3, Stan Wawrinka from Switzerland. He will be playing from Japan, Kai Nishikori, coming off of his quarterfinal win over Andy Murray. I think Novak Djokovic is going to take it here on the men's side. He hasn't even played that much. Think about this whole tournament. It seems like everyone he's playing has to retire. Novak Djokovic, he hasn't even played more than 14 sets in the whole tournament. So I think he's definitely well rested. I think going into semifinal here, he will be able to handle Monfils and then beat the winner of either Wawrinka or Nishikori. So I do think Novak Djokovic will win the men's side. On the women's side, I'll take Angelique Kerber. She's going to be the new number 1 overall women's tennis player, and I think she will win the U.S. Open. So moving on from that, I will be shifting gears, talking about UFC 203. We have it live from the Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, tomorrow night, headlined by the main event, the heavyweight championship bout between the champion Stipe Miocic and Alistair the Reem Overeem. So Alistair Overeem, definitely a guy who's a lot more experienced. He's coming in at 41 wins, 14 losses, and 1 no contest. And then you have the champion Miocic coming in at 15 wins and 2 losses. So Alistair Overeem, obviously the more experienced guy, but he's a lot older of a guy as well, been in the game a lot longer. He does have the weight advantage. He does have 25 pounds on the champion. But you know what? I'm going to keep on with the trend here, and I will say that Miocic wins and defends his title. And then in sort of the co-main event, or the fight right underneath that, you have another heavyweight bout. You have the former you have the former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum. He's taking on Travis Brown. I do think the Brazilian Verdum will win that fight. And then you have a lot of great fights as well. You have the California kid Uriah Faber. He's fighting Jimmy Rivera. And then the fight that I think everyone has their eyes on in mixed martial arts is the debut of Phil Brooks, a.k.a. CM Punk, against Mickey Gall. CM Punk coming pretty much right off the street into mixed martial arts, into the UFC. He's coming from WWE, sort of being just like Brock Lesnar coming from WWE over to UFC. But with Brock Lesnar, he actually had a wrestling background. He was a collegiate national champion at Minnesota. UFC here with CM Punk, he's just coming in right off the street, right out of WWE. Never had any mixed martial arts experience. Never had any wrestling experience. Coming against Mickey Gall, who is currently undefeated at 2-0. I don't see any way that CM Punk even stands a chance to beat Gall here. I really don't. I understand what the UFC is doing. Obviously, CM Punk is a name. He's a face. They're trying to sort of promote and sell tickets, promote their brand. Why do you think they brought back Brock Lesnar for UFC 200? Same thing with CM Punk. He's a name. He's a face. They're going to try and sell tickets with him. I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on this fight because of that reason. They've never seen him fight before. He's never fought in mixed martial arts, period, before. So a lot of people are going to be interested. I don't see any way he wins, and I think because of that, people are not going to take basically WWE wrestlers, CM Punk seriously, because I honestly expect Mickey Gall to defeat him in the first round. Mickey Gall is a good submission fighter. He likes to take people down. Both of his wins are by submission. I wouldn't be surprised if he does that to CM Punk. I'm going to say in the first round, honestly. I don't even know what to expect from CM Punk. I don't know what he sort of likes to do. He does have the weight advantage, but, who knows? I think Mickey Gall is going to win, and I think CM Punk is definitely not going to be taken sort of seriously, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the UFC in just a couple of fights. He's never even fought before, and he's coming in to a sport where people have been training their whole entire life. He's been training for a couple of years on and off through injuries. I really don't see any way, period, that CM Punk stands a chance in this fight at all. So if we're sticking here on the fighting scene, going away from UFC, but sticking into the fighting scene, obviously, as I said, moving over to boxing, there is a big boxing bout this weekend as well. We have Triple G going up against Kell Brook. It is a battle of the undefeateds. It's going down in the O2 Arena in London. Triple G coming in at 35-0 with 32 knockouts, so quite impressive. He's ranked as basically the number one middleweight in the world. Going into London, going into Kell Brook's backyard in the UK to fight him. He's also 36-0. He has 25 knockouts. So honestly, I really think that Gennady Golovkin Triple G is going to win this fight. To say it's going to be a knockout, obviously you can say by his record, he's only won 3 fights not by a knockout. So it's really pretty much set in stone that a lot of people think he's going to knock him out. I'm not going to say that. I think he probably wins by decision. It seems like a lot of these big boxing bouts are always won by decisions. You rarely see knockouts. Maybe he'll knock him down one time. Who knows? I do expect Triple G to win this fight over Kell Brook and sort of improve and sort of bolster his rank as the number one middleweight in the world. He is the heavy favorite as well, so I think he'll be able to handle business. So the weigh-ins were actually done this morning here, obviously, in England. They are 8 hours ahead of us. So Triple G weighed in at 158.8, and Kell Brook weighed in at 159.4. So definitely a big event in boxing. You don't see too many more with Floyd Mayweather retiring. You have Manny Pacquiao, who's still contemplating coming out and fighting. He still wants to fight. But with boxing, there's not that many big names. Obviously, mixed martial arts, UFC has kind of taken over the fighting scene. They're really dominating. They're kind of going global as well, all over the place. So, I mean, it's hard for boxing to really compete. I think when you look at Triple G and Kell Brook, I think it's kind of an exciting fight because you have two guys who are capable of getting a knockout, which is, as I said, that's something you don't really see too often in the boxing scene. So maybe if one of these guys can get a knockout, something maybe flashy, it will maybe revitalize some people's interest in boxing and kind of take it away from UFC. But, I mean, I really don't see it happening. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. So, big day in London, big day in England as a whole. We have, like I said, the Manchester Derby. I'll sort of talk about that real quick. I think that, obviously, Sergio Aguero for Manchester City is not going to play. I think he's definitely the best player on the field. I think Manchester City is a better team, but without Aguero, I think they're going to struggle. I think it's going to be hard. I'm going to say a 1-1 draw because I really don't know who is going to win the game. I think a 1-1 draw seems fair. I see it really likely. Maybe even 2-2. Both these teams have good defensive records, so I don't maybe see that happening. But who knows? I'm going to take a draw because I don't know what exactly is going to happen. So you have that, which is going to be spearheading a lot of the action in England. And obviously you have the Triple G and Kell Brook fight at the end of the night. So a big day in England for sports as well. And just UFC, boxing, a great day, great Saturday if you're a fan of those two sports. And you have some good events happening for you. So with that being said, I'm going to take my last commercial break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Going to be touching up on a few college football games I think could have the possibility to be good, as well as some trending stories, some things that went on over the last couple of days, and some things that are a little funny. So I'll be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Don't you guys turn that radio dial off.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Of course, as you heard in the commercial, if you want all news UFC, all news MMA, UFC 203, you can, of course, listen to the MMA podcast here at the Golden State Media Concepts. Andrew Tate, the host there, does a great job. He knows all things UFC, MMA. He does a great job with that, and he's really well-rounded as well. So I'm going to move in here, talk a little bit of college football. There's really not much on the schedule this week, and then finish out the show with some What's Trending. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we got kind of teased last week with a great week in college football. In my opinion, the best week one we've ever seen, and it kind of lived up to the hype. Think about Notre Dame and Texas. Think about Florida State and Ole Miss. Even Tennessee on Thursday night had to go to overtime. So we had a lot of great games. This week, really not so much. Seems like a lot of teams scheduled a lot of great opening week 1 games and then kind of took the week off, kind of had like a preseason warm-up in instance. I mean, look at some of these games. You have Florida State taking on Charleston Southern. You have Clemson taking on Troy. They're only favored by 35.5 points. You have Houston, fresh off their upset over Oklahoma, taking on Lamar. I mean, Alabama over Western Kentucky. Not a lot of great games. There are a couple that I guess will maybe get people to look at them. The first one is going to be Iowa against Iowa State. Obviously, you have an interstate rivalry. The Iowa Hawkeyes are favored by 15 points. They're the home team as well. But Iowa State is a team that a lot of people think could possibly spring an upset. Obviously, you have a rivalry game. You have, people getting highly anticipated, highly excited. You want to beat your rival, your interstate rival. So who knows? Maybe that game could go one way or another. It's on the Big Ten Network if you want to catch it out on Saturday. It's at 4:30 Pacific time. That'll be 7:30 Eastern. Obviously, Saturday, stealing a lot of headlines is going to be the boxing and the MMA, as I mentioned in the last segment. But, who knows? If you're a college football fan, if you're a fan of Iowa State, obviously you will be looking forward to that game. Another game I think could have a possibility of being interesting is going to be number 15 TCU taking on Arkansas. Obviously, with Arkansas, you have an SEC school. You have TCU coming in 15th ranked out of the Big 12. TCU is only favored by 7.5 points, but you have an over-under of 58.5. So the experts predict this game could be, a shootout. You could expect a lot of thunderstorms down there in Texas. So who knows? That could, obviously, weather is a big sort of indicator how games go. It changes a lot of things. So there's a possibility that it could be a good game. Another game I'm looking at is number 17 Tennessee taking on Virginia Tech. This game is going to be at Bristol Motor Speedway, obviously in Bristol, Tennessee. They're expecting 150,000 people to be at this game. Definitely a lot more than you'd expect at any other venue. Obviously, look at some of the big venues like the Big House in Michigan. Tennessee has a nice stadium as well. Seat about 105,000. You're going to have, 1.5 times that with 150,000 at Bristol Motor Speedway. A lot of people excited, looking forward to this game. Looking at Tennessee, how they can sort of bounce back and recover from their tough overtime win, but really a letdown against Appalachian State to open their season last Thursday. They do have 9 days to prepare for Virginia Tech, who are not really the powerhouse in the ACC that they have been really over the last decade and years before that with Frank Beamer as their head coach. So I really expect Tennessee to win this game. They are favored by 11.5. I think Tennessee will sort of rebound at least against Virginia Tech. I think you learned a lot about Tennessee in that game against Appalachian State. I don't think they're really ready to compete against some of the big boys like Ole Miss, Alabama. LSU was disappointing, but I think they'll still be a good team. So I don't think Tennessee's really to compete against those teams. I just think obviously it's one game, we'll have to wait and see, but I think they just let me down too much. You have to obviously go against them. So I think those are just a few college football games I'm looking forward to. Obviously in week 2, we don't have too much to look forward to, but obviously next week, more non-conference games. Maybe it's the start of a few conference games. We're going to have a lot to look forward to. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be looking at Ohio State and Oklahoma. So that's a really important game already for Oklahoma. They really need to, in my opinion, win out if they want to have any chance of even being there in the college football playoff at the end of the season. So now I'm going to end the show here. We have some trending stories. The first one I'm going to talk about is kind of puzzling to me. Obviously, it's a great thing, but it's kind of puzzling to me as far as when this was scheduled. So last night we had the NBA Hall of Fame inductions. Obviously, you have a lot of great players and coaches being introduced. People like Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson, who in my opinion is the best little guy to play in the NBA. I think if you look at pound for pound, Allen Iverson probably one of the best in the NBA ever. Obviously, you have Yao Ming, kind of a injury-plagued career, but you have to look at everything he did for the globalization of basketball in China, and he was a good player here for the Houston Rockets when he was healthy. You have Sheryl Swoopes, a great women's player, one of the first to come out as being openly gay. And then you have great coaches like Tom Izzo, who currently coaches for Michigan State, the college basketball program. He's done a lot of great things there, won multiple national championships. So I find it puzzling that the NBA did this last night. So they have their NBA Hall of Fame induction ceremony on the night that the NFL is returning. That makes no sense at all, but obviously it's a great accomplishment for a lot of these guys to get put in the NBA Hall of Fame. Obviously, I'd say they're all really warranted and really deserving, so great for them. Shaq, Yao Ming, Allen Iverson, Tom Izzo, Sheryl Swoopes, among others. So it's great that they're finally in the NBA Hall of Fame. So another sort of storyline that took headlines last night that I was also surprised with was that Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk is reporting that former Seattle Seahawks running back beast mode Marshawn Lynch is, quote, up in the air about coming out of retirement and that he could possibly return in Week 4 or Week 5. So Marshawn Lynch obviously announced during the Super Bowl on Twitter with a picture of him hanging up cleats. He's 30 years old, that he will be retiring. He's had multiple conversations with Sports Illustrated that he's done. You know, he enjoyed his time playing. Now it's time to watch his cousins and other athletes that he likes watching because he's not going to play anymore. But now reports are from Florio are that it's up in the air that he would come out of retirement. If he were to possibly come out from retirement, the Seahawks would still hold Marshawn Lynch's rights if he returned, and then they'd have to decide what they do from there. Obviously, they do have a couple of decent running backs. Think about Thomas Rawls, who stepped in for Lynch last year. Marshawn Lynch missed a lot of games with an ab injury. Thomas Rawls had a good season, but he's coming off an injury as well, an ankle injury. So they have Thomas Rawls and Christine Michael leading their backfield right now. That could be a good, solid 1-2 punch. If Marshawn Lynch were to come back, I don't know what the Seahawks would really do, because honestly, I don't think I really even believe that Marshawn Lynch is going to come back. I'm not sure how serious this is being taken. Obviously, one guy in my fantasy football league took it a little too serious because he actually added Marshawn Lynch to his fantasy roster. So I think that's probably going a little too far. But, I mean, who knows? With Marshawn Lynch, you never know. He's always unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. One of the most, I don't know how I want to phrase this, unique athletes, I'd say, especially with his stance towards media and everything. So, I don't know. Marshawn Lynch definitely takes the cake with that. And I really don't think he's going to be coming out of retirement. He doesn't really have anything else to prove. I think he would have came out of retirement by now. He keeps talking about how he's done, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he would return. You know, I don't really see that happening. So speaking on retirement, and one guy who is actually going to return and come out of retirement is former U.S. men's national team player, probably the legend really in U.S. soccer, and LA Galaxy member Landon Donovan. He is going to be returning and playing back for the Galaxy after his 21-month retirement. He's re-signed with the Galaxy, so he has a desire to play, according to his coach and general manager Bruce Arena of the Galaxy. He first began discussing a comeback with Donovan last weekend. And he says, so in this case, if you're going to gamble a little bit, it's a pretty good guy to gamble with. Obviously, Landon Donovan, one of the most respected United States soccer players ever. So the Galaxy have 6 regular season games left, and they have the MLS playoffs remaining. Donovan's contract is set to expire at the end of the season, so terms of the deal were not released publicly, but a source with knowledge of the negotiations said that Donovan's contract was worth the league's maximum, which is about $457,000. And it will be portrayed to the final third of the season, so he will be earning a little over $150,000 to return. So here's what I found most interesting, is that he's expected to be in uniform for Sunday's home game against Orlando City, obviously led by the Brazilian legend Kaká, just, a few days after coming out of retirement. So quote, I've spent a lot of time speaking with my family and close friends over the past several days, and we all agree this will be a wonderful opportunity and win-win situation for everyone. That's what Donovan said about coming back. So, I mean, what I found interesting is that he would be ready to play just a few days, just 5 days after coming out of retirement. I find that kind of iffy. Like, he's staying in top fitness level shape while he's retired, doing TV work, owning part owner of a Premier League team. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he'll make an appearance. Maybe he'll come on as a sub. I don't think he will start. But the one thing I found funny was I saw on Twitter, it's like, oh my God, Landon Donovan's coming back. We have our first Brett Favre moment of the MLS. And it really is. And it's kind of like Landon Donovan, you can compare him to Brett Favre in an aspect coming out of retirement, a legend of the game. I just found that pretty interesting and pretty funny. So sticking with LA news to end the show here, we obviously have the return tonight of Clayton Kershaw coming off the DL. It's going to be his first start since June 30th with that back injury. He's coming back against the Miami Marlins. Going to be battling against Jose Fernandez. He's the ace of their staff, a good strikeout pitcher. And as far as Kershaw coming back to the Dodgers, coming back at a great time, coming back in the stretch run with 23 games left to play. They have 5 left against the San Francisco Giants. 5 out of 23, that's almost 20% of your schedule. So pretty important there for Kershaw to come back against a good team like the Giants. They're still battling in the NL West. I think the Dodgers will hold on to that. The Giants are playing really poor lately. But as far as Kershaw goes, it looks like he will be on a pitch count tonight, maybe between 60 to 70 pitches. So obviously it depends on how long people are sort of taking pitches, how long these at-bats go. I think if this come out publicly, I'm sure the Marlins will be more disciplined at the plate, taking a lot more pitches. So as far as that goes, maybe you see Kershaw 5-6 innings at the most. If he's doing quite well, they're still trying to ease him back into the rotation. They don't want to gamble too much with him coming off a back injury. They're going to need him for the playoffs. He's coming back at a great time. The Dodgers really surprising everybody with how well they are playing without Clayton Kershaw. Everyone, myself included, thought they would kind of drop out and struggle, really falter without him. But without him, they have done quite the opposite. They're doing great. Corey Seager at shortstop is probably going to win the NL Rookie of the Year award. Justin Turner's hitting great at third base. Adrian Gonzalez, the ageless wonder, is still hitting 300, even in his later years in his career. So Clayton Kershaw returning for the Dodgers. Expect 60 to 70 pitches tonight against Miami, and we'll have to see how it goes. I think it's a huge addition for the Dodgers to get the best pitcher in baseball back. Obviously, if he can stay healthy, then maybe they can challenge come playoff time with, about a month left of the season. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But with that being said, guys, this is going to conclude this episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening. We have NFL football back. I know a lot of you are excited, just as I am. Obviously, last night, the Broncos defeating the Panthers in the first game. But then a full slate of games on Sunday, including a couple on Monday night as well. Boxing, MMA, soccer, baseball, with a little bit of basketball news, as I mentioned, Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So a lot of great sporting events going on over the weekend. And Monday, Alex and I will be back here in the studio to break down everything that we saw over the weekend, and then even preview maybe a couple of those Monday night games featuring the Redskins and the Steelers against, as well, the Rams and the Niners. So we'll be back here on Monday. I hope you enjoyed. I'd like to thank you for listening. You can hear all of the podcast episodes on our podcast website page. That is gsmcpodcast.com. Make sure you click on the portfolio of podcasts. You click on the sports one. You can find all the episodes, as well as any other podcasts that you might like. There's a lot of great things sports-related and non-sports-related as well. And there's even a coming soon tab, so you can see podcasts that we're hoping to launch here at the network at the end of this year, early next year as well. So you can find us on a lot of great media playback systems as well. iTunes is big, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, a lot of great forms there. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. It's at GSMC_sports. And we're also on YouTube and Facebook as well. So with that being said, there's no reason you cannot hear every single episode we do this show. It's every day, Monday through Friday. We're recording it in the morning, should be uploaded in the afternoon. And you can just hear us all the time. We're here every day, and you can find them all on demand on all those great platforms I just mentioned. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you for listening. Again, I am Ben Brown, and I hope you have a good weekend, and we will be back here in the studio to see you guys on Monday. Goodbye.